toxic culture, right? I believe it's in those tough worlds where actually humans are developed. We have seen the exposure of toxic leadership and abuse. Toughness is on that line of actual faith.
You are not going to be able to be that person overnight. I have to get tougher because people need me. Welcome back to another episode of the New Rose Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with Mr. Adrian Crawford. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing lovely. What's been on your mind lately?
Man,
What hasn't been on your mind lately?
I know. Yeah, that's probably a better question. I would say, wonder if we're going to, war, and we're already in war, but if it's going to be,
that reminds me.
Yeah.
Did you see, this is relevant to the podcast episode.
All right.
The tweet that he made yesterday?
About annihilating them off the face of the map.
A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again.
Yes. No, we're dealing with the rantings of a madman, and so it's insane. It's crazy. I mean, it is. And people, and what's really that I think is troublesome is how people justify it of like, oh, he's playing chess and they're playing checkers and he's doing this. But what people don't realize, you're dealing with human lives. Like, you are literally dealing with individuals and people. And I think that is where, I always say that, like, we've gotten to a place becoming so callous about humanity and the value of that life. So I think that's what bothers me the most about it. It's just, it's so cavalier with human life.
Yeah. I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
That's true. It's sad. I mean, I guess what would you maybe say to the people that are listening who are like confused and afraid?
In these moments, I always say that there's nothing, that right now that we can do. So we can do, but it's very important that you actually just lock in on, like, doing what you actually can, that in your world that you actually have, the world that you can impact, that you actually go out there and treat humanity the right type of way, that you actually be someone who's empowering, doing all the stuff that you actually desire for our president to do, that hopefully you will do the same thing, versus it being something to where, we want somebody else to do something and we ourselves aren't doing it. So that's why I always try to tell people, is that in those moments to try to learn from it, because we're always one step away from being the very worst person who we may have in our minds or whatever that could be. And so I think it's important to learn from situations like this, learn from how when you have power, it's not just about just being right. It's not just about just winning. It's about actually, are you doing things that actually are for better for actually humans and humanity and stuff like that. And I think when I hear people justify it or whatever, to me, and that doesn't mean that, like, by you going against, say, the situation, that means you agree with another party. I just think and so I think we have a lot of people, and again, a lot of like political leaders. That's what I would say. There's a lot of people who sit in the Democrat and Republican Party right now who, to me, are incredible. Like, to me, I believe are very cowardly, because you can't let people behave that way. Same thing with the Democratic Party. They knew that Joe Biden he was not there mentally, and they let that go on. And so it's all about people having their votes, keeping their power. And that's what we always talk about here, about giving power away. Power is not meant to stay static. And when it does, it just starts to see a breakdown of people and civilization. And you're just seeing it right now.
I saw a video the other day on TikTok, of course, and it was a business owner, or like a really wealthy businessman, who essentially had started selling a lot of his American assets, especially businesses that he owned, was selling a lot of the things that he owned, and had a plan to move his family. Like, they sent everybody within their family into all the different states and locations where they had businesses in order to essentially close and hand off the deals. So with plans to move to somewhere else, just because of what he believed to be the future of America in terms of its place in global powers is going to significantly shift. I think there is a lot of, in what you see, this fear of, like, how do I start to store up cash? How do I get rid of or tie up any loose ends? What do I do with my family? Which is, I think, is all like very fair questions. So I'm just interested to hear your take on, like, observing this moment that in ways does rhyme from history, but is also very different than what has happened before in the American context. How are you taking into consideration what you're seeing and how to plan for your future?
I think how I really try to plan for my future is, I think, being very present right now. That doesn't mean you don't think about your future. Like if someone feels like, hey, they want to go somewhere else, move to a different place. I mean, that's the beauty of freedom, right? For me, I don't think it is to go there. I think it is to be here. And so how I look at these moments, how I'm preparing for these moments is actually trying to say, man, what, instead of just looking out there at all the things that are happening, I mean, I can have an opinion about it. I can, start to maybe think, okay, where's the market go? Whatever, and then you make bets and whatever best, your investments based off of that. But as far as what I'm doing, the work is just doubling down on the work, because I think even the work that we do here is so important, because again, I hope that we have the ability to spark something in the hearts of people who listen to this, who are part of within the ecosystem of what we have, that they may be someone who is sitting in political power one day and they actually will use it for the right way. I just believe that we are in such a need of actual leaders right now. And so for me, how I'm viewing the future is like, man, how do we double down on actually developing actually whole integrated human beings who have the correct operating system, that they can actually go out there and begin to build in the right kind of way to bring flourishing into humanity. So for me, that's how I'm thinking about it. But again, it's not wrong if someone else is thinking about, trying to get the heck up out of here. Cause I mean, I get it, but I just feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. So I just try to lock in day to day on what's in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Something else that happened recently is Oracle laid off 30,000 people.
Yep.
Replaced them with AI, and Oracle's only one example of many different organizations. And I guess observing that, and if I am a 23-year-old college student who's in significant amounts of debt, who's hearing from people who are in, the 24, 25, 26 range, it's like they can't find a job. They're moving with their parents in significant amounts of debt. We're probably going to go into war. We can't afford housing. The cost of just like living is so expensive. When somebody's in a place where maybe they don't yet and haven't yet developed that, like, I guess, internal compass or understanding of where it is they feel like they're supposed to be, or have like a long-term mission for their life, what would be your advice to them on how to think through both their present moment and also their future?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I have a lot of empathy, because, those who are graduating college or just out of college, they're entering into a very unpredictable world, even more than it's ever been. So I have a lot of empathy for them. I think how I would view it, I'm trying to think if I were 23, 24 going into this crazy market. I think the first thing is actually trying to have an understanding of what are your like skill sets and abilities. I think that's really important, because you always have to look at what you have in your hands. I would also look at what are my relationships that I have, relationships that matter, relationships that I've invested in, that have invested into me. And then I would look at opportunities, when you start talking about just from because you're saying people may not have a job, not being able to, housing, whatever. So the first thing is like, you got to be able to provide for yourself. And so I think I would start looking there. I think, in the age of AI right now, this gives people incredible amounts of opportunity right now to actually grow and to actually make an impact. I mean, I would tell somebody, if you're asking me right now, somebody saying, what would I do? I'm like, listen, go and become so efficient and proficient at, whether if it's a Claude or, I would say specifically with Claude, because like I was talking to a founder the other day, owns a large company, and he's pretty much said, man, they're going to have people, they have about 200 employees at their corporate office. And they're probably about a $300 million company. They're not going to add any more employees this year because of all the, like, say, lower level stuff that AI can do. He said, but what we are going to do, he said, we may add a couple people who actually their whole job is to just to deal with, AI. So if AI systems need to be created within the organization, that's what they do. Their job is literally to make sure AI systems are running well. So I mean, you have to be a coder. You just have to know how to prompt well. You have to know how to, you have to be a strategic thinker. There's some things you have to do. And so I would tell people, man, if you can actually learn that's a great skill set to have. Or I think you have an opportunity to go right to market with a lot of stuff. I mean, we just saw the first $1 billion company that has one employee ever sold with I think it was OpenClaw. I mean, it's a different world. So there's a lot of opportunity right now. And the other thing I would tell somebody right now is that and I say this a lot, it's not as a cop-out, but it's really true, it's so important to just be present and be in the moment, because sometimes fear, the worry, it just robs you of actually thinking creative. But if you can lock in, there are a lot of opportunities that are in front of us right now. A lot of opportunities that weren't here 6 months ago or a year ago. Yeah. But I think fear and anxiety and those things can cause us to live in the future or live in the past. And I think that's when people don't innovate, they don't find their way out of stuff.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yep.
I think this conversation is super relevant for the topic that we're going to talk about today. We're going to continue in Magnum Opus, The Art of Becoming One of One. We're still in the chisel. Today's chapter is called Toxic versus Tough. And it is essentially about how in order to become one of one, you have to be a person who is tough.
Yeah.
So what made you think that this chapter was a really important one to include in Magnum Opus?
Because one of the things I try to do when I'm writing is try to look at things that are being said in society, or what is there maybe some common narratives or things said that I think go to extremes, right? And one of those I've been hearing, that I heard a lot about, like toxic culture, right? Toxic leadership, and I think there's some. And here's the thing: and some of those things are absolutely true and real. Where we have seen the exposure of toxic leadership and abuse and all that, which absolutely needs to be addressed and things like that. But now, what happens, like anything, when there becomes a good thing, I tell people, a good thing is one step away from going to a crazy thing, right? So now it's something that was really good that where I think people were being protected, women were being protected, things were being exposed. Where I think it went wrong is now it became any type of environment where you're being demanded to do something is now toxic. Any environment where people aren't speaking to you the way you think you should be spoken to, it's now toxic. Any environment that asks you to push a little more, it's now toxic. And so I think it went to this kind of world. And I think that has become very dangerous, because I believe it's in those tough worlds where actually humans are developed. And I like to say, some of the greatest leadership things I learned in bad environments, because I learned what not to do.
Yeah. Okay. So what does it mean to be tough, and why does that matter when discovering what makes you one of one?
Because it's not an easy journey. Because when you are trying to discover, because we've been told, like, to find out who you are, it's just naturally how you feel. It should just be natural to you. Well, I don't agree with that, because I think we've had so many things that have buried what our purpose and calling and things could be. It's buried underneath a lot of stuff. It's buried underneath internal scripts. It's buried underneath things of our past. It's buried underneath real pain, real trauma. It's buried underneath neglect. It's buried underneath the fear of what everybody else may think or whatever. And so you have to have a level of toughness. Just like if you think about someone, when you think about someone who's like a miner, right? Or somebody works like in a coal mine back in the day or whatever, the last thing you ever thought about someone, like, oh, they're kind of soft. Like, it doesn't matter who you were. Like,
now you're about to talk about a child.
No, like, what I'm saying? Like, anybody who did it, like, they're just like, they're tough. Like, what I mean? Even, back in the day, we didn't have like labor laws. It was like, there were 12-year-old down there in the mines. Like,
the miners were miners.
Yeah, like,
we're mining.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that. But anything they do, like those, like they're tough, because why? Is because it was hard work. And I think we have made finding who we are not to be a journey in hard work. And so I think that's when I say toughness, because you're going to have to go through stuff. You're going to have toughness when, you're starting to discover that, and everybody else around you, or people who are close to you, or I should say everybody, but people who are close to you, like your parents or maybe your spouse or someone else, like, no, I don't think that at all, because maybe they see you in one light. There's an internal toughness you have to say, no, I still love you, but I am moving forward with this. So I just think that toughness is such an important part of anything in life.
Why do you think we're avoidant of toughness and working hard?
I think the first thing is because we have lost the ability, I think as parents, I'm saying this because, having kids, is that, like, we've lost the ability to, as a parents, to let kids sit in difficult situations without rescuing them. And I think some of that was because of how, say, like in Gen X, we were really like these latchkey kids where like we had the ability, we just were out there just wilding out, right? Not, we, like our parents, that's when you start seeing the rise of both parents working and things like that. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden we were just left to ourselves, a lot. And so now what I think the overcorrection came in our generation was very much so the hovering over with kids and not giving, and when I was growing up, we had to learn how, because our parents weren't around. You didn't talk as much, whatever it may be. And what that led to is that you just had to work through stuff. Nowadays, they don't have to work. We try to, protect them. The other thing is just, I think we don't have the toughness in certain areas because there's instant gratification, right? We can, back in the day, if you got into an issue with somebody at school, you weren't jumping on IG Live. You weren't DMing that person. You weren't talking. You had to sit with it. And a lot of times, man, you went to sleep, you got up, all right, it ain't that big of a deal, right? And so I think the way technology has advanced, it has cut out toughness. Because, like waiting on something, you have to have a level of toughness to wait on something. Mm-hmm. So some of that stuff has just naturally, just being in the ethos of advancement, has done that as well. And I just think we don't like that feeling. Like, we don't like the feeling. And again, I get it, because like, I'll say this too, and I've never said this. I think a lot of times it's unprocessed. It's adults' unprocessed childhood that hinder their kids from actually growing, because they remember that feeling. They remember that feeling being bullied. They remember that feeling being alone. They remember that feeling. And because they've not worked through it and processed what was healthy, what was not healthy, whatever, now they just know that feeling. So when their kid comes to them and say, oh, well, and say they dealt with a situation at school with a teacher, right, who was treating them unfair. As soon as that happens, they haven't processed that well. So now they're going instantly to, how they were treated. And so they're the ones going right to the teacher instead of letting the kid work through stuff, them go talk to them, whatever it may be. And so I think a lot of unprocessed past from adults is limiting like the kind of the atmosphere we're building for people to develop, have some toughness.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. That's a good point, because I think that when you start to develop a mindset that you can't make it through things, mm-hmm. and you can't recover from something, you have no hope, and you also almost have this like helplessness of being able to make it through hard stuff and do hard things. So then why would you be a good coach for somebody who's going through something? Because then I think your posture becomes, how do I keep you from experiencing the thing that I wasn't able to recover from? Rather than, I've done the work and I made it through this, and I can see how you can take this pain, this loneliness, this suffering, and turn it into opportunity.
And you're right. I think it's when you don't have the ability to like just handle things, like you're just going to stop, because every level, every type of growth in life, there's pain to it. You know what I mean? Like any type of like next step, there's just pain to it. You saw it, as in, being in the world that you were in athletics, it's like, man, going from one level to the next, you're like, oh, there was pain to that. There's pain in like, what if I'm not good enough? That's that's an internal pain that you have when you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'll never, for me, when I wanted to like playing into my freshman year, going to my sophomore year, saying, dude, I wanted to start on varsity on a really good team. It was like, for 3 or 4 months leading to the season, it was just a constant state of like this like fear of like, I may not make it. So what that did, that drove me. Every day when I come home from school, I'm like, dude, I just want to play video games or go to sleep. I'm like, nope, I got to work out. I got to go do this stuff. That was first before anything else. Because why? Because there was something that was driving me. And I say that is I think at times, man, like that was painful. That was painful when you're like, when you're growing up in levels, and all of a sudden now you're like, oh, I'm playing with like, in the basketball, I'm playing against like grown men, and you're like, oh, there was pain that was there. There was fear. There's all that stuff. Just every level, there's growth right now in a business and growing into a new level with the company that we're building. There's pain. Why? Because like, we've never built like this. So there's the fear of what if it doesn't happen? That's painful. And at 47 years old, I'm like, I don't want to sometimes you're like, I just want to be comfortable. I don't want to deal with that. But again, any growth, there has to be pain. So you have to learn how to go through stuff. And if you don't learn how to go through stuff, you will be very stagnant in life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think a huge marker of maturity is knowing that there's more to life than just feeling good.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like, I am a bad person when there's not turmoil in my life. And I was listening to this podcast the other day. I think it was Mel Robbins.
Yep.
And I think she was interviewing, he's super, you would know him. I can't remember his name, but he's super well known for like leadership and development and stuff like that. And they were kind of talking about how something as simple as like organizing your basement,
Yep.
that thing that you've been putting off for a long time. I think we all experience that feeling when we do something that's hard work, and we're like, I want to watch TV instead of doing that. I want to catch up on Paradise season 2 instead of organizing the basement, you know? But whenever you choose to organize the basement, there's this feeling of satisfaction that comes with it. And if you build a life that has almost that constant cycle of like hard work and satisfaction, that's coming from that, you start to develop a self-confidence that you can't develop in any other form of life.
No, you're right. And there's two things I think about. I think about with my son, the only reason why people had asked me a question because I play basketball professionally, all that. They're like, oh, well, do you want to follow in your footsteps? I was like, no. I think only reason why he played sports and played basketball was because of it's something he liked. But beyond that, the next thing for him that it came down to was that it was the only thing for him as a young man, the military and sports, that actually build that level of like, you have to build toughness. You have resistance. You have a goal you have to reach. You're working with all different types of people. You have to suffer together. You have to deal with failure. You have to deal with your own merit. Your own merit gets you on the floor, doesn't get you on the floor, gets you on the field, doesn't. See, those are things that I believe that, like what you're saying, when you're fighting and you finally get there, you're like, oh, I can do that. But if you've never had to fight and do that, then you don't think when you get older and you're on your own, why would you ever think you can go do something? Because you've never done it consistently. And I agree with you. It becomes a habit. Doing hard stuff, it's just a habit. Just being able to do difficult things, it just becomes a habit. It's like why this morning, I wake up at 5:30. Why? To go sit in a 190-degree sauna. Not because I'm like, because honestly, one of the reasons why I do it is because I try to, as much as I can, every day to do something I don't want to do. I have no desire.
The sauna builds endurance for sure.
It does, because I was in there today. I haven't the last few days, or probably I haven't been as consistent the last few weeks. I was in there today, and normally, we are in there 20, 25 minutes. Great. And it's miserable, but it's still whatever. I was in that thing for 10 minutes, and I'm like, I want to quit. I got to tap out. I'm like, but you're in there with some other people, and you're like, nope, I got to stay in. But here's what that does. I could have walked out. I'm a grown man. I could have walked out, whatever. No big deal. But it's one of those things to where it's, again, building that type of habit, inside every single day to do something you may not want to do. And so I think that and again, I tell people all the time, you got to start building, like the way you build it, just start building micro things. It doesn't have to be like, you know what, I'm about to sell everything and go move. I'm like, no, don't go do something crazy like that. But like you were saying, it may be like, hey, I've been holding off organizing this basement. That is my one goal this week. That's the one. You can't say just go do it. Or every day you wake up, you may not like to like read, or then just pick. I'm gonna read 3 pages. Just start doing stuff, and that seems small, but that builds the muscle of learning how to live very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think the sauna and the cold plunge is a really good example, because there's nothing like being in an environment of pressure and learning how to breathe.
Yes.
And when you do the sauna or the cold plunge and you're in such an uncomfortable environment, and then you realize that your breath is starting to actually catch up and you're starting to be more present and more calm. At least I personally, I feel so proud of myself.
When you get,
I'm like, I was able to essentially regulate in such a moment of pressure, and you can see how that translates into different environments. Yeah,
like an example, I was with my youngest and her best friend Grace, and so we went to the place where I'm in sauna cold plunge. And so the one cold plunge, which the one that we have at the gym, it's the one that stays at like 34 degrees.
That has like ice caps.
Yeah, it's miserable, right? And it always stays there no matter how hot it is outside, whatever. And so I was watching, I was challenged by them. I'm like, all right, here you guys go. You guys got to do it. And they both, I've seen grown men only could go 15 seconds. They went like a minute and 15 seconds apiece.
Did you tell them you would get them Lululemon if they did?
I didn't do it this time. I wanted to see. Normally
sometimes
I do.
He does that.
Yeah, sometimes I do that. But no, they both sat in there, and they were like, they just sat, and it wasn't like, oh, I got to get out. And I was like, But again, both of them, with them both being dancers, they've had to live in certain worlds where like you have an expectation and you have to deliver on that expectation. And I use that to say I wanted to see what they would do, because that's something very small that can they learn to fight through it, and what will you do to be able to do that. But I agree, there's so many little things you can do every single day that can actually start to build that muscle.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why athletes and the military are the most credible high performers, is because people see that you've experienced something like that, and they want to hire you immediately. They want to work with you immediately because they're like, I know that this person can do hard things and still be proactive. Yeah.
No, they can. And I think that's why when you talk to executives, they love hiring athletes, because they know what it means to like suffer. They know there's a goal. They've had to work with different types of people. The other thing that I'm saying from a toughness standpoint that athletics teaches you to make the main thing the main thing. And when you go in a corporate environment, it's like, there's certain things to where athletes, like, there's just a toughness, because like, it's something about when you're on say like in the world I was in, like you could be in a world, man, and then legitimately cussing each other out and like, throw me the effing ball or do da. And you walk off the court and it was like, and you're fine. And not because we're avoidant. No, it was just it was in the middle of a high pressure moment. It got my attention or got their attention. And then you did it work. Okay. And then you move on. If it was something, then you talk about it. But I think that's why they love it, because you learn how to work in those types of environments.
Well, it's also such a good practice of I have to get tougher because people need me.
Yes, that right there.
And I feel like that's what we think is toxic.
I want you to keep going down that road.
Because I think that some of the toxic conversation, parts of it does come down to this other person's expectation of me. It's unkind. It's not fair. It's for their own benefit. And there's just nothing like being a part of a team who's on mission together and someone looking at you and being like, if you don't get it together, dude, you're out.
Like I'm telling you, like, no, as a freshman, I'll give you a great example. As a freshman, it was me and my roommate. We were the only freshmen that were playing that. There was one more guy where we played. But we were a veteran team. You got, at that time, I turned 18 on August 14th. So I was like, school had just started. I just turned 18. So you got these dudes, 22, 23, whatever. Grown men. And like, there's nothing like being in a high pressure environment, 15,000 people in the game. And like one of the seniors who probably, again, one of my great teammates, a guy named Shay Seals, looking at me in my eyes. And like, I was running, playing point guard. And he looks at he's like, freshman, let me tell you right now, you better throw me the effing ball coming down the floor. Don't turn this ball over. And you're like, in your head, you're like, okay, yes, sir. Like, you're out there playing. And here's the thing, you better deliver. You better freaking deliver. Like they expect you. They don't care that you're a freshman. They don't care. If you're on the floor, you got to deliver. And that pressure, I am so grateful for that. Like I look back on those moments growing up. I am so incredibly grateful for those moments where I was fearful, like legit scared, because I'm like, I can't mess this up, because what it taught me is to deliver when pressure's on, because that's life. And so I'm forever grateful for that. But in today's world, sometimes people don't want to do that, and they're missing so many valuable lessons.
One of the other things that I think too is I think Rick Rubin does such a wonderful job at trying to help people fall more in love with the process and the diligence and the discipline of creating more than the outcome that it could lead to. And I think even when you're on a team, like say you're doing sports, of course the goal is to win. Absolutely, the goal is to win. But there's been so many times where I've been a part of a team and maybe we didn't get the outcome that we wanted, but we know that every single one of us did all that we possibly could in order to get there. And you still experience this like satisfaction and this togetherness of like, we can't judge somebody else's interpretation of the art. We can't judge the call that the ref makes, like we can't control the call that the ref makes, but we can control our actions. We can control how hard we work. And there's just nothing like knowing that you did everything that you possibly could, even if it doesn't lead to the outcome that you desire.
Yeah, because, this past year, and I say this, one of the clients I work with was Florida State men's basketball. And it was actually one of the is one of my favorite clients to work with this year because of just the process. So I was there from the jump, from the time Luke Laus got hired. He's been somebody I've known for, since he was 17. And from helping him build a roster to first day of practice, all these firsts that he had, I was pretty much there. And us going through like literally a 5-game losing streak, and I'm talking about getting blasted by teams. 30-point loss, 40-point loss. Where you're like, oh man, this is bad, right? Mm-hmm. But being in there and watching these kids not quit, and just every day they walked in every single day. Like, we got a chance to win the national championship. And it goes to the credit of Luke's leadership and the entire staff of like, man, just belief. And the reason what made it so special is watching here's what changed the season. What really tried to change the season, there's a bunch of factors, but one was accountability. It was that Luke is a player's coach. But one thing he started realizing, he's like, man, I have to change. I got to be uncomfortable. I got to hold them to a higher standard. I got to demand this. And so he started doing it. And it was like, the first little bit, it was like suffering for those kids. It was like practice was miserable for them. But here's what happened. When they got going, they all just bought in and they just changed and grow. And then you watch us, they went 5 road games, which was a school. And we were we were in the ACC tournament, the number 1 team in the country. We have a chance to win the game on the last second shot, and we missed. Point of why I say that is that those kids, when that season ended, going to what you're saying, when the season ended, every last one of those kids in there were heartbroken because they were heartbroken, but they would do it all over again because of like you said, the process, because they actually came together. And that's one of the things I said to them when we were struggling. I sat in front of them I was like, you guys like each other, you don't love each other. And how they learn to love each other, they start suffering together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's missed. I think a lot of times people don't realize that the depth of relationship goes off of the willingness of the burdens of someone else you're willing to carry with them. Mm-hmm. And I think when you do that, you learn more about that person. You begin to understand where they're coming from. And that just takes toughness to actually go through that. Everybody has problems. You don't want to, sometimes you don't want to deal with somebody else's problems. But you got to have toughness to be able to carry somebody else's stuff, and it helps you grow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why it's hard to embrace hard work is because we only want to do it if it means it's going to lead to the outcome that we want.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just personally believe that so much of that is out of our control.
Yep.
It's like, and I also think there's so many factors, whether it's talent, who else is involved, who's making the call, who's closing the business deal, who are you pitching to in order to give the money?
The economy right now, like
the economy.
Like I said, you may you may have the perfect pitch, you have the perfect idea, but now gas and oil prices are up, things like that. People may be like, yeah, it's not the time to invest, even though 2 months ago it may have been perfect. They would have invested, $1 million. And so keep going. But
you could do everything that you were told that you were supposed to do and work hard at and still not get the outcome that you wanted. And that's why I think it's just so crucial that embracing toughness and working hard and growing in resilience, it's about acquiring the skill of resilience than it is about the outcomes that can come. And the outcomes are going to come if you learn to work hard, for sure. Do I think that you can control what comes even if you work hard? I don't personally believe that.
Let me say this, because I think you said something and I don't want people to miss this. Hard work and resilience, it is a skill that can be learned. Mm-hmm. It isn't, and let me tell you, not just a skill that can be learned, it's a valuable skill. Somebody that's on our team here, JT, one of the things when coaches would, because he ended up playing at Ole Miss, and when coaches would call me and ask me about him, they would say, well, what's what does he do that's high major, right? What does he do that's like power 4 level? And the first thing I said, like, he has a power, like he has a motor. That kid will run through it. He has a will to try. And they were like, oh, and coaches love that. And then he did some other things. But I tell people all the time, that's a skill every human being can learn. There's only a certain, everybody's not going to be as athletic, or everybody may not be as smart as Elon or do whatever. You may have come from this wealthy family, but what you can do is everybody can learn how to work hard. Mm-hmm. And I think learning that skill of resilience is important.
Yeah. There's a part that you wrote in the book that says we have confused discomfort with danger and we have conflated correction with abuse.
Kind of a bar.
Bars. Why do you think that we confuse discomfort with danger?
Because if you've never been uncomfortable, then it's unfamiliar, which it can feel dangerous, right? It doesn't matter what environment you're in, right? Like it can feel like when this feels a little bit dangerous, right? Like for example, this is gonna sound crazy, but like my wife running her dance studio. The first time I was trying to help her backstage at a dance competition, I was incredibly nervous and scared. Why? It is just like, it is herding cat. People are everywhere. And I'm like, we're going to lose a kid. Like, you know what I'm saying? Kids going to run out the door. Like, yeah. And it was like, but it wasn't an environment I was used to. I was uncomfortable in that environment. And so I always felt like there was this danger of like a kid running off somewhere or something else happening when Wendy was like, she's over there unbothered. Well, because she was used to that environment. I think if you've never been consistently uncomfortable, when you get into that world, in your natural defense mechanism is, nope, it's dangerous. And so I think that's why. I think a lot of times people haven't been in those types of environments.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think just kind of pondering, thinking more about what toughness is and how typically it's kind of communicated as what I would really consider more of like a disconnection from your emotionality. Yes. Like you're tough if you can disconnect completely from how you feel and all that kind of stuff and just keep it moving. There's a component of that, the compartmentalization, that is real and is mature. But I think the toughest people are the people who have hope when things are hopeless. Yeah. People who are loving when everything seems to be incredibly chaotic. Yep. People who have the capacity to forgive whenever it seems like nobody really deserves it. Yep. So could you describe a little bit more on like what do we mean by toughness?
That's a great question. And I think the way you put it, I mean, you summed up a lot of it. I think it's the willingness to do the right thing when you don't want to. It's the willingness to show up when nothing in you wants to show up, and people will be okay with you not showing up. It's the willingness to speak up when it would just be just easier to not say anything in that moment. It's the willingness to sacrifice your resources when you may not have, where you don't know, if I do this, then what about me? That's where toughness is. Toughness is on that line of actual faith. It's that ability to step out and trust in the move when you know that it's there. And I think that's what I think another part of toughness is being value led when your values may not be accepted in environments. And I think that's another way of that.
A lot of the examples that we're using are really about physical toughness.
Yeah.
And that's because I think when you learn how to be physically tough, you start to understand the process of what it means to embody resilience, and you can start to apply that in your emotional world when things get really hard and painful. Yeah. Truthfully, some of the physically strongest people I know, like gym bros, are like the softest, most emotionally immature people I know. Yes. So I guess like what do you think is the disconnect between being able to be like physically strong and physically tough, but maybe not acquiring that skill within emotional maturity?
Yeah, because I think you make a great point, and I'm glad you said that so we can dive into it. I think that there's toughness is not just like one thing. It's very complex, like most things in life. There's like the physical toughness, and you're right. I mean, I know people who grew up in super just crazy environments, right? Grew up sometimes no parents in the home, or single parent, raised by their grandmother, and experienced violence and all the stuff, right? And man, these are like some people, man, they would go to war with you, fight with you, do whatever. But emotionally, man, like it's put them in prison. It's made them lose jobs because they can literally not have the internal toughness to regulate themselves. They just fly off the handle, whatever. See, I think there's multiple ways of toughness. I think there's the idea of physical, right? But I think internal toughness, and I actually think that's the most important one, because I think if you can have internal toughness, then internal toughness leads to external toughness. And so I think a lot of times we've been taught in society that it's been about what toughness is. It's just the external. It's the strongest person. It's the person who can, they wear watches stuff, and they're able to do whatever physical activity. It's like when you're watching people go into a gym And they got this one. I forgot the name of the gym where all these guys are going into it now. And
Crunch?
no. It's like this. Like it's these guys. I don't know where they're out of, but they have like this, and they're like these strong dudes. And the whole thing's like you go in there, and it makes them do the most craziest stuff. Like start off, you got to do 100 burpees. You got to do 8 million curls. I mean, it's like the whole thing is like just absurd, right? Mm-hmm. But that's what we've seen as like toughness, which I think that's a part of toughness. But those same dudes who go into that gym, they are emotionally soft when they are so weak when someone says something to them, or when someone criticizes them or critiques them, or they're the ones who are like, oh, that's not fair. Like I said, we see a lot with internet stars, people, to where I see with coaches a lot, the CEOs, like you are now in a place of position of power. You now have you have influence. And people, like when I talk to coaches and they get upset because people critique them, I'm like, what did you expect? Like they're going to critique you. Why? It's because when you're out there, like fans, they are stockholders. They're paying their money. And so they're going to have an opinion. So, but it's like, oh my God, I can't believe people do that. I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, that's just part of life. That's like me, literally, as a part of one of my roles as a pastor. I read my Bible. People were complaining about Moses. Like, I'm stupid if I don't think they're going to complain about me. That was Moses. Like, he saw God.
Moses.
Yeah, he
Drake.
saw. I know, right? He saw God. Like, you should put that in there.
Drake.
Yeah. He saw like God face to face, or the Apostle Paul. All these people. I'm like, so I have pastor friends of mine. Like, and again, I understand you vent, you say whatever, but when people are really like just torn up, I can't believe people. What did you expect? And I think if you don't have toughness to get through it, or here's another way of toughness to go down the road, is that the toughness not to respond to something. Like sometimes, man, people will say things, or they email you stuff, or they do whatever, and it's like, honestly, sometimes people think I don't care. I'm like, no, there's just a toughness in me. I'm not gonna waste my time on that. If I know it's wrong, and I know they're just doing it out of place, why am I going to literally? All I'm doing right there is I'm caving into. Here's what it is comes down to. I want to respond to them so that I can somehow, like, either prove them wrong, or mainly I want to go out there so I can somehow make them see a different side of me. I don't want you to think negative of me, so let me try to go fix that. And I think sometimes that's just weakness. That's not toughness. What that is you care about what other people's opinions are. Somebody has a negative opinion, and people around you don't think that, and that's not true, then what in the world are you responding to that stuff for? Mm-hmm. And you see it all the time. And then, like, people get these platforms to make money, and then they complain about it. I'm like, dude, no, that's what comes with the territory. Sorry. And so when I actually hear someone talk about it, they're like, I very few people I hear talk about that, but when I do hear them say, like, man, where somebody criticizes them, he's like, yeah, man, this is just kind of what it is. This is part of, I got these benefits of this. This is what comes on with it. I'm like, that's a level of toughness, because they're facing reality.
I feel like if I were to describe the layers, I would start off with saying, okay, first you have to get strong.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally, you have to actually develop the skill of strength. The second thing I would say is you have to have the confidence to believe that you are strong, to believe that you have resilience. And the third thing I would say is you have to have the wisdom to know when to and when to not use your strength.
Yeah. No, I would 100% agree with you. So I'll ask you this question. In your generation, right? If you could create like a magic pill, a magic pill that would actually, and if in your generation anybody took this pill, they would instantly have this like attribute. Okay, what would that be?
I would be so annoying and I would do nothing, because I think that that's the problem with Gen Z is they want to be able to take a magic pill in order to embody the attributes rather than do the work of embodying them.
That is such a you response. It's unbelievable.
You got to know your strength. I have the pill and I will not give it to you.
Yeah. Okay, but let's just say, like, if Gen Z wasn't where they are, I 100% agree with you on the statement too. Mm-hmm. But if there was something that you feel like that this would help them, this would be the attribute.
I would say the ability to create, because I think if you learn how to make things, you naturally learn how to be resilient,
Yeah.
innovative, and a risk taker.
Yeah.
I think we're going into a world that we have so much opportunity to just like play like we have house money.
Yeah.
It's like things are going crazy in every sphere. You're not going to be able to predict how much money you can make.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to predict things relationally. You're not going to be able to control those things. And I think we see throughout history when the environment is that, you have so much opportunity to just mess up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you can literally start any business that you want to. You can put anything that you're making out there. So I think when you learn just the ability to make things and make them quickly, like when you want to write. Yep. When you want to post a TikTok video, post a TikTok video.
100%.
When you want to communicate, like just do it. Like don't think about it so long, because people are like a new page is turned so frequently right now because of how rapidly things are changing. So I think when you learn just the ability to create, the ability to generate, you naturally grow in resilience, and you also naturally grow in self-confidence and just become a problem solver.
Yeah, that was, I used to say like mine was self-awareness. I think now what I would say would be the ability, what you just said at the end, to solve problems. Like, I think if you can solve problems, you always have the ability to be employed, and you always help humanity when that's what you're doing. Like, you just have the ability to solve problems. And I think that that's where, so I do believe the ability to create is a great one. And I also think the ability like to solve problems, because like you said, when you're able to do that, so now when you're able to, okay, what's the problem are we trying to solve? And we have the access now to actually create the solution. You know, sometimes we used to be like, oh man, how do you solve this? And we could come up with an idea, whatever, but then we didn't have the ability to go create the solution. Now there's a lot of solutions we can go create simply just by, you know, opening up our computer and starting to build stuff out. And so I do think it's a really, really cool era. But it's actually, I was thinking about this this morning. It's a cool era to live in right now. Excuse me. But it also is it's an interesting one, because I feel like in moments the world is moving so fast that it feels like you're like, this morning I was like, man, it feels like you're like in a dream.
Yeah.
It feels like you're in a dream, because it's like, I mean, like sitting here and just realizing, like, just think about this. As we're recording this, and you read the tweet earlier, if there was not a deal that got struck from what they're saying from the Pakistani, I think prime minister or whatever, there was a chance that our president would have dropped nuclear bomb. He could have done whatever. And you're talking about the world we have known was over. Like, just imagine going back to, like, you know, when Hiroshima happened, not Hiroshima, but when Pearl Harbor happened, how when Pearl Harbor happened, the world changed like forever when we got bombed, you know, by the Japanese. Like, that was like what yesterday could, and it was just kind of like, and like we're just going throughout our day. You know, and I feel like what's happening, we're living in all these moments now where you got this technology that's going through the roof, and you have a geopolitical like world that's changing, and it's like, and then I feel like things are just moving. You know, like last week gas was this, now it's like, you know, it's like gas is through the roof. It's just like stuff is just changing so quick, and so I think in these moments it's so important for us to be present. You know what I mean? A lot of times I'll say, hey, I'll leave us with this thing. That's the thing I want to leave us with today, is being present. Like, it's so important to be present.
I guess before we go into that, I want to say too, like, I'm so tired of my heroes being on TV. Like, and I get there's a fantasy, there's a part that you can kind of create the person to whoever you want them to be when you're telling a story or when you're watching a story. But oftentimes, like when I watch something like 1923, like Yellowstone, the original Dutton family, there's so much that I'm watching that I'm like, we as humans, we actually can embody this courage. We actually can embody this risk. And so I guess I'm really excited for, as the veil starts to drop, as pressure starts to increase, as things start to change even more rapidly than what they already have, I'm really excited for us to discover like the men and women throughout the world right now who for like the past decade or longer have been working so hard to just add value to where they find themselves, have been working hard to be like high character individuals. Because I think that those people are going to get revealed too. And we're going to see a lot of men and women rise up to solve the problems in unconventional ways that we have been hoping and expecting, you know, the people in the positions of power and all of that we would hope we've been hoping they would do.
Yep.
I think we're going to see a lot of men and women rise up and start taking responsibility for like the places that they find themselves.
No, I agree. I agree. I think it is going to be like I've been saying, and I think we're in the era of like really pillars, not platforms, people who actually carry weight, and they've been carrying weight, and it's going to be the people who have been carrying weight where no one's known, and then all of a sudden they're going to be those like, man, who is this person in this random place that is doing these really cool things? It's because they've just been carrying weight.
And we're going to look at them and we're going to say, how can I be them? How can I become like them? And the answer is going to be, they've been that for 20 years.
Yes.
They've been working so diligently for 20 years, and you are not going to be able to be that person overnight.
And I think that's one of the most important things, even is like writing, kind of, going back to the book, even writing this, and even long term, like what some of my dreams and goals are, is that I hope it inspires people. I hope to live a life that inspires people. But what I also want people to do is like, what I want to be able to teach people, what's even in the book, they're principles, guiding principles, not like a how-to. That's why there's not in that book a ton of like, do this, because I want them to be guiding principles, because I think these are principles that are part of helping you become one of one. But how that plays out and what that does, it just looks different. And I think we've completely left the world of like the artificial where you can just copy. I think, and that is one thing I'm so grateful for, is that always, for whatever reason, the intuition inside of me, and I think it's a gift I've been given, was like to always look at what are the underneath things, what are the principles, not what are they doing, but what are the first principles for these people to do those types of things. And so I think that if we can start to do that, instead of trying to help people, like, man, people going out there like, hey, here's creating these courses, great, but I'm like, are you helping people figure out those principles, and then the other stuff that really helps them thinking deeper about like how they do that? And so those out there who are persevering, building, you've been doing stuff for the last 20 years, here's what I encourage you to do, man. Just start thinking through deeply about what got you there. Not like, oh, I did this and this, I sold this, I did this. No. What allowed you to sell that? What allowed you to fight through those moments where you weren't selling anything? What allowed you to stay committed in that marriage when you didn't want to? What allowed you to speak up when you didn't want to speak up? What was underneath that? I think those are the types of things that not just this generation, I think people in general, they need that type of wisdom. And I think that's what the world, again, kind of is saying, that the world right now needs wisdom, and wisdom is stuff where it's like, it's actually skill, it's knowledge that's actually applied, and on the other side, how that works. And so I hope that we can actually see more wisdom in the earth.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Well, hey guys.
I almost said amen, like yeah. Closing a prayer.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, hey guys, since Bree is almost saying amen, because your boy had a word that time, you know what I'm saying? Made the church say amen. Boom, put that in there, Oscar, right there. Anyway, but hey, I hope you guys I want to encourage you, go have a great week. Be present where you're at. Go take some risk. I mean, really take risk, because we are living in a time and era where life is very quick, and the one thing you don't want to do is to find yourself like regretting things that you should have done, you could have done, but you just decided not to do it. And so it takes toughness to do that. So go out there, take risks, go enjoy life, and enjoying life means going through difficult things. So until next time, keep writing new rules.
Boom.